I kind of was concerned thinking that he's blackmailing her because she's acting different. And he played some audio of him saying that he has videos and tapes and it will come out whenever he wants it to come out. So Pat was like, I called some people behind the scenes, like, yo, check on Rim.
Eazy-E is back in the headlines, but not in the way anyone expected. What unfolded across social media this week has left fans shocked, sparking rumors that have haunted the hip-hop world for decades. Could the godfather of gangsta rap have somehow outsmarted history itself? Let's find out. Viral resurrection. It began, as modern mythologies often do, with a blurry clip and a billion thumb scrolls. In early 2025, social feeds across the planet convulsed with a grainy figure in a Compton cap, black shades, and that unmistakable smirk that once defined an entire era of West Coast rebellion. Eazy-E Alive became the week's unofficial password to internet chaos. Within hours, the supposed resurrection of Eric Wright, hip-hop's most notorious ghost, transformed into the most contagious digital seance of the year. One short clip, a few seconds of shaky camera work, ignited a wildfire of reposts, reaction videos, and armchair forensics. The thumbnail alone, a dark silhouette framed by cheap neon filters, was enough to crash timelines.
Now, if a white person walks up to Eazy-E and says, hey,
depends on how you said it. Like you say, what's up? Then that's cool. But if you just say, then I'm gonna take it different. And I might be over there, you be pulling me off of it, you know?
The power of the illusion wasn't just nostalgia, it was narrative hunger. People wanted to believe that the godfather of gangsta rap had somehow slipped past the grave, that the man who once turned street politics into platinum poetry had outsmarted death itself. For a generation raised on grainy VHS interviews and YouTube memorials, seeing that familiar gait reemerge in 2025 felt like a breach in reality, a digital ghost stepping back into the feed. Each repost carried a new caption, each reaction injected new life into the lie. Unseen footage. Rare clip. He's back. Even the skeptics couldn't resist clicking, replaying, zooming in. Disbelief still counted as engagement, and the algorithm doesn't discriminate between faith and irony. Soon, the footage became an object of ritualistic obsession. Comment sections turned into digital revival tents where believers and cynics clashed in capital letters and fire emojis. Threads dissected frame-by-frame inconsistencies, the lighting around the jawline, the smoothness of the skin, the unnatural flicker of an eye that didn't quite sync with the voice. Yet the more people debunked, the stronger the myth grew. Logic only fertilized disbelief. After all, mystery feeds better than certainty, and the internet's favorite meal is a maybe.
You never get took by.
What's up, G? How you feeling, man? Where you from, bro? I'm live, man.
Compton, man.
You ready for Compton? Let them know where you from. What part?
What's up, man? Tucker, man. Long Beach Boulevard.
As the clip snowballed, it began mutating. Users edited in background noise from vintage interviews, remixed clips from old MTV segments, and even layered AI-synthesized voices mimicking his iconic cadence. The result was a Frankenstein collage of the past, eerily convincing for those who wanted to believe and irresistibly absurd for those who didn't. Media outlets scrambled to catch up, issuing cautious breakdowns that only magnified curiosity. Verified accounts whispered the same forbidden question: what if? And just like that, an algorithmic accident became an archaeological dig into 1990s legend making. By the time fact-checkers intervened, the myth had already evolved beyond correction. It wasn't about whether Eazy-E was alive. It was about how easily the internet could resurrect him. In a culture where pixels can pass for proof, the blurred boundary between memory and manipulation becomes the perfect breeding ground for myth. The footage might be fake, the man long gone, but the impact, undeniably real. The resurrection wasn't biological, it was digital, and maybe that's the most 2025 thing imaginable. Death doubts. The rumor machine surrounding Eazy-E's death never truly went silent, it just waited for Wi-Fi. Every few years, the same dark questions crawl back into the headlines, carrying the same haunted promise. What if the official story wasn't the real one? When the 2025 footage began flooding timelines, that old curiosity reignited with an electric vengeance. The grainy clip didn't just show a lookalike in a Compton cap, it summoned the ghost of every unresolved whisper about his sudden illness, his short hospital stay, and the dangerous people orbiting his career in the early 90s. Fans, especially those steeped in hip-hop's turbulent history, treated the footage like a long-lost confession tape.
Would you say that you're a gangster? Not anymore. Not anymore. Why is that? What made you give up that lifestyle?
I didn't give it up.
You didn't give it up.
Different person.
You're a different person.
right now.
Back in 1995, the official narrative was brutally simple. Eazy-E had died from complications related to AIDS, a shock to both fans and peers. Yet simplicity rarely satisfies a culture built on hidden tracks and coded rivalries. Over time, small inconsistencies in public statements, shifts in estate control, and family comments about unanswered questions gave rise to a mythos, a lingering sense that maybe something was off. His daughter's documentary campaign nearly a decade ago poured gasoline on that myth. Its promise to uncover shocking truths about his final days didn't deliver hard revelations, but it did something even more potent. It kept the mystery alive. Each teaser, each crowdfunding update became an invitation for the internet to speculate freely about medical records, betrayal, and shadowy interventions. Among the recurring villains of that narrative, one name always resurfaces: Suge Knight. His reputation as a power broker of menace in the death row era made him a natural lightning rod for fan suspicion. Decades of interviews, rap beefs, and viral sound bites have turned him into a kind of mythological figure, the embodiment of the industry's darkest possibilities. So when the 2025 clip arrived, many viewers subconsciously stitched that old specter into the new video, reading it as proof that Eazy had outsmarted or survived his alleged enemies. The imagination doesn't need evidence, it needs tension. And this story had tension in abundance.
Let's talk about the business of gangster rap. A lot of people say that it's reached its peak.
I don't think so.
Really? You think it's gonna go farther? Where is it gonna go?
Over the top.
Uh-oh, Chris?
Actually, the title gangster rap doesn't even really exist, because real gangsters don't rap. Gangsters, so maybe, you know.
But beyond the big names and grim nostalgia lies a quieter, more psychological reason these theories endure. They soothe a kind of cultural guilt. The hip-hop community of the early 90s watched its icons fall fast, consumed by violence, disease, and the machinery of fame. To believe that Eazy-E didn't truly die, that he might have escaped, hidden, or even faked his end, is to rewrite a tragedy into survival. It turns grief into defiance. It gives the audience power over the story again, something they lost in 1995. In that light, the 2025 footage isn't just viral curiosity, it's emotional archaeology. It digs up the anxieties, the rivalries, the paranoia that have followed his legacy for 30 years. The real question isn't whether Eazy-E is alive, it's why people still need him to be. Because as long as those doubts circulate, his death remains an open wound, and his legend stays eternally untouchable. Digital forensics. The 2025 Eazy-E clip didn't just spark nostalgia, it triggered a full-scale digital autopsy. Within hours of the first uploads, internet sleuths, self-titled forensic experts, and genuine data analysts descended upon the grainy footage like detectives dusting a crime scene. What began as a nostalgic curiosity soon turned into a scientific spectacle. Frames frozen, pixels dissected, shadows measured like evidence in a courtroom of chaos. The internet thrives on illusion, but it also loves the illusion of investigation, and the Eazy-E clip became the perfect specimen. Blurry enough to intrigue, clear enough to manipulate.
They got this stuff they get blood from somebody with AIDS, and then they shoot you with it.
Oh,
so
well, that seems bad.
That's a slow death.
Yeah.
An Eazy-E thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay. Way to lighten the mood. Yeah. Wow.
Every element of the video became a data point in a digital trial. The flicker of light on his sunglasses, the shadow on his neck, even the grain of the pavement. Those who knew how to look recognized the telltale signs of modern manipulation. Mismatched shadows suggesting composite layering, facial movements that lagged milliseconds behind audio, and the subtle flicker around the eyes that AI-generated imagery never quite hides. The rhythm of lip motion against the track of the voice was slightly offbeat, like a remix that didn't match the tempo. The deeper the viewers zoomed, the more the seams began to show, an imperfect resurrection wrapped in low-resolution mystery. But beyond the pixels, the upload patterns told their own story. The earliest accounts posting the footage weren't longtime fans or music historians. They were fresh profiles, anonymous handles with no past activity, the digital fingerprints of opportunism. A genuine discovery tends to come from a corner of the internet where archives live. This came from nowhere and everywhere at once. By the time journalists and hobbyist analysts traced timestamps, the clip had already been mirrored, upscaled, and re-edited across hundreds of reposts. That chaos made it impossible to locate an original source, a detail that in itself spoke volumes. In the attention economy, virality buries origins, and what's lost in metadata is replaced by speculation.
Yes, his death occurred as a direct complication of the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. He was diagnosed earlier this week as having pneumocystis pneumonia. He'd been treated with several regimes to control his pneumocystis. Unfortunately, none of the regimes that he received was successful.
The deeper technical dives, frame-by-frame breakdowns, EXIF scrapes, compression mapping, revealed a Frankenstein creation of reused footage. Old interviews from the early 90s, snippets from NWA documentaries, and archival B-rolls seemed to surface as matching references. Bits of his 1994 interviews with similar gestures and outfits lined up almost too well with stills from the viral clip. Analysts argued that someone had layered AI-assisted facial models onto archival bodies, splicing nostalgia and novelty until the border between truth and recreation dissolved. In an era where deepfake tools are as accessible as music editing apps, the question wasn't whether someone could make this, it was why they did. The reason, as always, was attention. The forensic chatter itself became part of the spectacle. Reaction videos, debunking threads, and split-screen comparisons multiplied, feeding the same algorithmic loop that gave the footage its first burst of life. It was irony at its sharpest. The very people disproving the illusion were keeping it alive. In the end, the verdict of the digital detectives was less important than the theater of the process. The Eazy-E footage wasn't proof of survival. It was proof of how badly the internet wants resurrection, and how technology can make a ghost feel briefly, convincingly real. Family feuds. The story of Eazy-E's afterlife, both legal and emotional, has always been more chaotic than cinematic. Behind the music and the myth sits a tangle of lawsuits, inheritance battles, and public spats that have turned grief into spectacle. The moment he died in 1995, the machinery of legacy went into motion. Record deals needed resolution, royalties demanded signatures, and the control of Ruthless Records, his empire, became a battlefield. Every decision made during those frantic months after his passing became a fossilized clue for conspiracy hunters. His widow's management of the estate, his children's frustrations with its direction, and the recurring disputes over rights and likeness all served as fertile soil for the next generation of rumors.
I see Eazy right before he died. He was talking about, yo, let's get the group back together. You think you could do it? I was like, yo, you work it out with Dre, come holla at me, you know what I mean? And it didn't happen because
family conflict is the perfect accelerant for myth. It keeps the cameras rolling long after the music fades. When his daughter launched a high-profile documentary years later, promising to investigate what really happened, she didn't just open an inquiry, she reopened a wound. The project gathered headlines and speculation rather than clarity. By promising revelation, it invited obsession. Every stalled update, every vague teaser became a mirror for public doubt. And when other family members took different sides, the internet treated their disagreements like coded messages from a divided truth. Legal complications made it worse. Multiple lawsuits over intellectual property, royalties, and control of Ruthless Records created a paper trail that fans interpreted as evidence of something darker. To the casual observer, the estate's internal turbulence looked like a cover-up. The deathbed signing of documents, the swift transfer of assets, the contradictory statements about his final wishes, each became a puzzle piece for digital detectives. Media outlets covering the lawsuits fed that fascination. Even when professional journalists noted that most disputes were routine matters of entertainment law, conspiracy-minded audiences heard something else: corruption, silence, unfinished business.
There's a conspiracy involving Suge Knight.
Oh yeah, what's that?
There was this interview done with Suge when he talked about how you gotta kind of get creative in how you kill someone. Like,
okay.
Suge Knight could have potentially been the person that gave Eazy-E AIDS.
How would he do
that? Through an intravenous needle.
And Eazy would never tell anybody that.
No, maybe Eazy didn't even know.
Nah, I think if somebody poke you with one of them goddamn needles, you know.
Over time, the conflict evolved from paperwork to philosophy. One side of the family sought closure through truth-seeking, while another guarded the brand, the catalog, and the image that paid the bills. Both positions made sense, yet to the outside world, their friction made everything smell of secrets. Add in the weight of hip-hop's paranoid history, the stories of betrayals, rival labels, and corporate manipulation, and the idea that something nefarious might have happened to Eazy-E felt narratively satisfying. It didn't have to be plausible, it just had to fit. So when the 2025 footage surfaced, it slotted seamlessly into this landscape of discord. People weren't just watching for proof of life, they were watching to see who in the family would react. Silence was interpreted as confirmation, denial as deflection. It became less about the clip itself and more about the fractures it exposed. The footage became an emotional weapon, a tool to test loyalty within a divided legacy. Decades later, what remains isn't evidence but inheritance, not just of music, but of distrust. The estate's ongoing disputes ensure that Eazy-E's story never rests. Every new rumor, every viral clip becomes another echo in the courtroom of memory, where closure is impossible, and myth is the only winner. Archival echoes. When the viral Eazy-E in 2025 footage began dominating social feeds, it didn't just awaken curiosity, it triggered a mass excavation. Fans, archivists, and nostalgia junkies collectively dug through the digital trenches, unearthing old interviews, forgotten documentaries, and lost tapes buried deep in the corners of YouTube. The irony was painful and perfect. While the internet argued over whether a shaky, grainy video was real, it was the authentic footage, grainy for legitimate reasons, that resurfaced to remind everyone what the man actually looked and sounded like. The resurrection wasn't biological, it was archival.
Even though I couldn't be there tonight, it always feels like somehow we're together in spirit. Hell yeah. So, congrats, homie. You deserve it.
In this strange digital archaeology, every rediscovered clip became a kind of seance. A 1992 car interview where he mused on chaos, an unreleased studio session where he laughed between takes, even a mid-90s press junket snippet where his hands trembled slightly. All of these fragments returned to circulation like ghost signals. Fans dissected his mannerisms frame by frame, comparing blink rates, posture, facial tics, and how his mouth moved when he said the word Compton. It was obsessive, almost forensic, a collective ritual of remembrance masquerading as investigation. For a generation raised on deepfakes and digital illusions, verifying the past had become an act of faith. As the weeks passed, the algorithm rewarded this cultural archaeology. Once the alive rumor caught fire, the platforms began suggesting old Eazy-E clips to anyone who watched it, turning the controversy into a full-blown nostalgia engine. Long-dormant fan channels saw spikes in views, archival uploaders found themselves trending, and suddenly the internet's back catalog of interviews became the new front line in the authenticity war. It wasn't just that people wanted to prove the new footage fake, they wanted to re-establish what real looked like. And Eazy-E's realness, that sly half-smile and streetwise composure, became a digital benchmark for truth. The irony was that this mass rediscovery blurred the lines further. With old footage circulating again, the 2025 clip felt less alien. Viewers had fresh images of Eazy in their minds, making the fake seem eerily plausible. Memory and manipulation collided. The more real material resurfaced, the easier it became for fabricated edits to blend in. This feedback loop, real nostalgia fueling belief in unreal content, proved irresistible to platforms hungry for engagement. Every clip, old or new, fed into the same machine. Meanwhile, the re-emergence of rare interviews gave the story emotional weight. The older Eazy-E, weary yet charismatic, seemed to be speaking from beyond, commenting indirectly on the storm that surrounded him decades later. In those recordings, his tone carried the paradox that defined him, both invincible and fragile, both legend and man. Fans began quoting his past statements out of context, weaving them into a new mythology where he predicted his own disappearance or survival. The line between prophecy and post-production collapsed. By the end of 2025, the conversation had become less about truth and more about texture. The sound of tape hiss, the wobble of VHS color, the low murmur of background studio chatter. These became symbols of authenticity in an era where even the dead could be remixed. Eazy-E's legacy lived not in the question of whether he had survived, but in the echo of his presence through the digital noise. His real footage, replayed and reinterpreted, became its own kind of resurrection, one that didn't need him to be alive to feel alive. Cultural afterlife. By the time the smoke of speculation began to clear, one truth stood untouched. Eazy-E didn't need to be alive to move culture. The 2025 frenzy, with its deepfakes, reposts, and feverish debates, revealed something bigger than the question of survival. It exposed the way myth now outruns mortality. In the algorithmic economy, legacy isn't inherited, it's constantly re-uploaded. Every repost, every frame-by-frame analysis, every what-if thread turns memory into monetizable nostalgia. Eazy-E, long gone in body, became infinitely present in pixels. The paradox was poetic. A rapper who once turned gangsta realism into pop spectacle was now the star of a digital seance powered by disbelief.
weren't alarmed by the cough because he smoked so much weed. Do you remember hearing him cough? And did you not think anything of it?
The cough was different that Sunday when we went to his house.
How so?
Because, man, I've smoked weed since 16, 17 years old. It wasn't a weed cough.
Okay.
It was a...
So you knew the difference.
Yeah,
you knew it wasn't a weed cough.
Yeah, it was not a weed cough.
The fascination with his supposed reappearance was never just about sighting him. It was about feeling him. For fans, believing he might still be alive was a way of keeping the rebellion alive too. He represented the birth of a genre, the fearless laugh in the face of censorship, the outlaw charm that defined West Coast dominance. In a pop culture landscape that sterilizes rebellion for streaming playlists, the idea of Eazy-E's ghost casually walking through a 2025 crowd felt thrilling. It was nostalgia weaponized against time. But beneath the cultural theater lies the cold logic of possibility. The notion of him surviving in secret for 30 years doesn't stand up to scrutiny, medical, legal, or logistical. The mid-90s were not kind to those diagnosed with AIDS before the breakthroughs of antiretroviral therapy. His death certificate, memorials, and corporate paperwork all anchor him to reality's timeline. Yet none of that matters to a digital audience conditioned to distrust official narratives. What matters is the feeling of resistance, the idea that maybe one icon escaped the system that chewed up so many. That's the new immortality, myth sustained by bandwidth. The clip's virality injected Eazy-E's name back into the bloodstream of culture. Streams of his catalog surged, old NWA footage resurfaced, new documentaries were pitched, and fresh generations began discovering him through a rumor rather than a record. It was cultural necromancy, not resurrection. He had become a permanent loop, an artist who could never die because disbelief itself kept him alive. So when people ask whether Eazy-E might still walk among us in 2025, the answer isn't hidden in metadata or footage. It's hiding in the comment sections, in the endless debates, in the playlists that spike every time his name trends. He's alive in the only way fame allows, eternally replayed, forever doubted, and never concluded. In the end, the legend of Eazy-E doesn't rest in cemeteries or hospital records. It lives in digital echoes, recycled myths, and a public too fascinated to move on. Whether deepfake or destiny, the viral 2025 footage added one more verse to his unfinished song. The man may have died in 1995, but the myth, it's still dropping new content. That's it for now. If you like this video, then make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss any new updates on the case. See you soon.